In the gleaming halls of the United Nations, a young entrepreneur was about to deliver the speech of their lifetime. What started as a routine keynote address took a shocking turn when they came face to face with their own buried trauma. Jordan Matthews wasn't your typical tech CEO. For 10 years, they had built an empire from nothing, known for revolutionary environmental innovations. When they encountered the microphone broadcasting to millions, they had no idea they were walking into a reckoning with the family that abandoned them. What began as professional triumph would become a painful journey toward forgiveness that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The lights were brilliant against Jordan Matthews' face as they stepped to the podium, but the heat couldn't touch the cold knot that had lived in their chest for 10 years. 2,000 delegates from 195 countries sat in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, their expectant faces turned toward the youngest CEO ever invited to address the climate summit. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jordan began, their voice steady despite the tremor in their hands, "we stand at a crossroads where the choices we make today will determine whether future generations inherit a world worth living in." The teleprompter reflected off their glasses, but Jordan had memorized every word. They had to. This moment, this stage, represented everything they'd built from nothing. Everything they'd clawed their way toward since the night their father's voice had echoed through the hardware store's back office. "You're no child of mine. At Green Tech Innovations, we've developed carbon capture technology that can remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere at a rate 30% more efficient than current methods." Jordan continued, their confidence growing with each sentence. "But technology alone cannot save us. We need systemic change. We need courage." The word courage stuck in their throat for just a moment. Courage. As if they'd had any choice. 10 years ago. The fluorescent lights in Matthews Hardware buzzing overhead. The smell of sawdust and metal polish. Emma hiding behind the paint display, tears streaming down her 14-year-old face. "Jordan, please." Their mother's voice had been barely a whisper. "Just tell them you were confused. Tell them it was a phase." Their father's hand had slammed against the counter. "I won't have this sin under my roof. You choose. Change or get out." The silence that followed had been deafening. Even now, Jordan could feel the weight of that moment. 18 years old, pre-med scholarship in hand, their entire future mapped out according to their parents' dreams. Until they'd whispered those 3 words that changed everything. "I am gay." The applause brought Jordan back to the present. They hadn't realized they'd paused, lost in memory. The delegates were on their feet, their faces alive with hope and determination. Jordan forced a smile. The same practiced expression they'd perfected in boardrooms and investor meetings. "Together, we can build a sustainable future," they concluded. "Not just for the environment, but for every person who's ever been told their dreams don't matter." The standing ovation thundered through the hall. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. Jordan stood there, 28 years old and worth $200 million, the founder of a company that employed 3,000 people across 6 countries. They should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt hollow. Backstage, Jin Park was bouncing on his toes like an excited child. At 32, Jordan's business partner still had the enthusiasm of the grad student who'd approached them at a coffee shop 6 years ago, with a napkin full of equations and dreams of changing the world. "Did you see their faces?" Jin grabbed Jordan's shoulders, his dark eyes bright with excitement. "CNN's calling it the speech of the decade. Twitter's going insane. #ClimateHope is trending worldwide." Jordan nodded, automatically checking their phone. The notifications were already overwhelming. Mentions, shares, interview requests flooding in faster than their assistant could handle. Their speech was being broadcast live across every major news network. "We did it," Jin continued, pulling up articles on his tablet. "Look at this. Young visionary challenges world leaders. The CEO who's saving the planet. Jordan, this is everything we worked for." Everything they'd worked for. Yes. But as Jordan watched Jin's infectious joy, they felt the familiar distance that success had brought. The higher they climbed, the more isolated they became. Fame was a glass wall. Everyone could see you, but no one could touch you. "I need some air," Jordan said quietly. Jin's smile faltered. "You okay? This should be the best day of our lives." "It is." The lie came easily now. Just processing everything. Outside the UN building, Jordan found a quiet corner away from the media circus. The October afternoon was crisp, Manhattan's skyline stretching endlessly in all directions. They'd come so far from that small town in Ohio, sometimes it felt like they'd lived multiple lifetimes. Their phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Saw you on TV." Dad watched the whole thing. Jordan's breath caught. Emma. Their sister, who'd been forbidden from contacting them for a decade. Whose graduation they'd missed. Whose college acceptance they'd never celebrated. Whose wedding invitation had never come. The phone trembled in their hands. Another message appeared. "He's been following your company since the beginning. Keeps newspaper clippings in his desk drawer. Maybe it's time to talk." Jordan stared at the words until they blurred. Robert Matthews, the man who'd thrown them out with nothing but a duffel bag and a broken heart, had been following their success? The man who'd said Jordan was an abomination, dead to him, had kept newspaper clippings? "There you are." Jin appeared beside them, concern etched across his features. "The media wants interviews. 60 Minutes is calling. This is huge, Jordan." Jordan quickly closed the messages, shoving the phone into their pocket. But their hands were shaking now, and Jin noticed everything. "What's wrong?" Jin's voice carried the protective edge it always had when someone threatened Jordan's well-being. "You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, they had. The ghost of the 18-year-old who'd believed their parents would choose love over prejudice. The ghost of the child who'd thought family was unbreakable. "Nothing," Jordan said, but the word felt brittle. "Just overwhelmed." Jin studied their face with the expertise of someone who'd helped pick up the pieces when Jordan had slept in their car for 3 months, too proud to ask for help and too broken to trust anyone. He'd been there through the failed prototypes, the rejected investors, the nights when Jordan had questioned whether any of it was worth the cost. "You don't have to do this alone," Jin said softly. "Whatever it is." But Jordan had been alone for 10 years. It was the only way they knew how to survive. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Emma. "He never threw away your pictures." Jordan closed their eyes, feeling the carefully constructed walls they'd built around their heart beginning to crack. Success was supposed to be armor. Money was supposed to be freedom. Fame was supposed to prove that they'd been right to choose authenticity over acceptance. So why did it feel like the loneliest victory in the world? "We should go," Jordan said finally, straightening their shoulders. "Can't keep the world waiting." But as they walked back toward the chaos of interviews and accolades, Jordan carried Emma's words with them like stones in their chest. Because somewhere in Ohio, in a hardware store that smelled of sawdust and broken dreams, their father was apparently keeping newspaper clippings, and Jordan didn't know if that made forgiveness possible, or just made the wound deeper. The elevator doors opened to reveal GreenTech's gleaming lobby, but Jordan barely noticed the familiar sight of their company's logo, etched in sustainable bamboo across the reception wall. Emma's messages had followed them through 3 interviews and a conference call with the European division, each notification making their chest tighten. "Ms. Matthews?" Their assistant's voice cut through the mental fog. "There's someone here to see you," says she's family. Jordan's blood turned to ice water. Standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to the elevator, was a woman with honey-colored hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and clutched a worn leather purse like a lifeline. Emma. 10 years collapsed into nothing. Jordan saw their 14-year-old sister hiding behind paint cans, tears streaming down her face as their father's voice shook the hardware store. Now she was 26, a woman Jordan didn't know but recognized in every line of her posture. "Jordan." Emma turned, and her eyes were exactly the same, warm brown like their mother's, now swimming with unshed tears. "I hoped, after today, maybe you'd want to talk." The lobby seemed to shrink around them. Other employees moved through the space, but Jordan felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that success had supposed to prevent. Jin appeared at their elbow, his protective instincts on high alert. "Should I call security?" he murmured, but Jordan shook their head. "Emma." The name felt foreign on their tongue. "How did you—" "I'm a teacher now, 4th grade." Emma's voice carried a tremor. "I've been following your company since the beginning. Every article, every interview. Dad doesn't know I—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "Can we talk? Please?" Jordan led her to a small conference room, Jin hovering nearby like a guardian angel. Through the glass walls, they could see employees pretending not to stare. Their private life had always been exactly that, private. Now their past was sitting across from them in a room that smelled of success and sanitizer. "You look good," Emma said softly. "Successful. Happy." The word happy hit like a physical blow. Jordan had convinced themselves they were happy. They had everything they dreamed of as that broken 18-year-old. So why did Emma's presence make them feel like they were drowning? "Dad watched your speech," Emma continued, her hands twisting the purse strap. 3 times. Mom made coffee and sat with him. They didn't say much, but... She pulled out her phone, showing Jordan a photo that made their world tilt. It was their father, sitting at the kitchen table Jordan remembered from childhood. But Robert Matthews looked older, grayer, his shoulders bent in a way that suggested the weight of years and regret. Spread before him were newspaper clippings, magazine articles, printouts from websites, all about Jordan. "He's been collecting them," Emma whispered. "Everything about green tech. He has a whole box. Mom thinks I don't know, but I've seen it. He reads every article like—" She swallowed hard. "Like he's trying to know you." Jordan's throat closed. The man who'd called them an abomination had been following their success for 10 years. The father who'd chosen his beliefs over his child had kept a secret shrine of newspaper clippings. "The store's struggling," Emma continued. "Has been for years. Big box stores, online shopping. Dad's too proud to ask for help, but they might lose everything. Mom works at the diner now, extra shifts." The irony was bitter. Jordan could buy the hardware store 10 times over, could solve their parents' financial problems with a single phone call, but money couldn't repair the fundamental break between them. "Why are you telling me this?" Jordan's voice came out rougher than intended. Emma's composure finally cracked. "Because I've spent 10 years being the perfect daughter, trying to fill the hole you left. But I can't. Nobody can. And I'm tired, Jordan. I'm so tired of pretending our family isn't broken." Through the conference room's glass walls, Jordan watched Jin fielding calls from reporters. Their phone was still buzzing with interview requests, speaking opportunities, chances to capitalize on today's triumph. But Emma's presence had stripped away the protective shell of success, leaving them raw and exposed. "They made their choice," Jordan said quietly. "People can change." Emma leaned forward, desperate. "Dad's been reading about LGBTQ+ issues. I found books in his truck. He's trying to understand. Too little. Too late." The thought rose automatically, a defensive wall Jordan had built over years of rejection. But Emma's tear-streaked face made it harder to maintain. "I can't," Jordan whispered. "I won't go through that again." Emma nodded slowly, disappointment etching lines around her eyes. "I understand. But Jordan? Today, when I watched you on that stage, you look just like Dad when he's talking about something he loves. You have his passion, his determination." She stood, smoothing her dress. "Maybe that's worth something." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Emma walked away, Jordan sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the monuments to their success. But all they could see was their father's bent shoulders and a box full of newspaper clippings, hidden like a secret shame or a desperate hope. The elevator doors opened to reveal GreenTech's gleaming lobby, but Jordan barely noticed the familiar sight of their company's logo etched in sustainable bamboo across the reception wall. Emma's messages had followed them through 3 interviews and a conference call with the European division, each notification making their chest tighten. "Ms. Matthews?" Their assistant's voice cut through the mental fog. "There's someone here to see you," says she's family. Jordan's blood turned to ice water. Standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to the elevator, was a woman with honey-colored hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and clutched a worn leather purse like a lifeline. Emma. 10 years collapsed into nothing. Jordan saw their 14-year-old sister hiding behind paint cans, tears streaming down her face as their father's voice shook the hardware store. Now she was 26, a woman Jordan didn't know but recognized in every line of her posture. "Jordan." Emma turned, and her eyes were exactly the same, warm brown like their mother's, now swimming with unshed tears. "I hoped, after today, maybe you'd want to talk." The lobby seemed to shrink around them. Other employees moved through the space, but Jordan felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that success had supposed to prevent. Jin appeared at their elbow, his protective instincts on high alert. "Should I call security?" he murmured, but Jordan shook their head. "Emma." The name felt foreign on their tongue. "How did you?" "I'm a teacher now, 4th grade." Emma's voice carried a tremor. "I've been following your company since the beginning. Every article, every interview. Dad doesn't know I..." She stopped, pressing her lips together. "Can we talk? Please?" Jordan led her to a small conference room, Jin hovering nearby like a guardian angel. Through the glass walls, they could see employees pretending not to stare. Their private life had always been exactly that. Private. Now their past was sitting across from them in a room that smelled of success and sanitizer. "You look good," Emma said softly. "Successful. Happy." The word happy hit like a physical blow. Jordan had convinced themselves they were happy. They had everything they dreamed of as that broken 18-year-old. So why did Emma's presence make them feel like they were drowning? "Dad watched your speech," Emma continued, her hands twisting the purse strap. 3 times. Mom made coffee and sat with him. They didn't say much, but she pulled out her phone, showing Jordan a photo that made their world tilt. It was their father, sitting at the kitchen table Jordan remembered from childhood. But Robert Matthews looked older, grayer, his shoulders bent in a way that suggested the weight of years and regret. Spread before him were newspaper clippings, magazine articles, printouts from websites. All about Jordan. "He's been collecting them," Emma whispered. "Everything about GreenTech. He has a whole box. Mom thinks I don't know, but I've seen it. He reads every article like..." She swallowed hard. "Like he's trying to know you." Jordan's throat closed. The man who'd called them an abomination had been following their success for 10 years? The father who'd chosen his beliefs over his child had kept a secret shrine of newspaper clippings? "The store's struggling," Emma continued. "Has been for years. Big box stores, online shopping. Dad's too proud to ask for help, but they might lose everything. Mom works at the diner now, extra shifts." The irony was bitter. Jordan could buy the hardware store 10 times over, could solve their parents' financial problems with a single phone call. But money couldn't repair the fundamental break between them. "Why are you telling me this?" Jordan's voice came out rougher than intended. Emma's composure finally cracked. "Because I've spent 10 years being the perfect daughter, trying to fill the hole you left. But I can't. Nobody can. And I'm tired, Jordan. I'm so tired of pretending our family isn't broken." Through the conference room's glass walls, Jordan watched Jin fielding calls from reporters. Their phone was still buzzing with interview requests, speaking opportunities, chances to capitalize on today's triumph. But Emma's presence had stripped away the protective shell of success, leaving them raw and exposed. "They made their choice," Jordan said quietly. "People can change." Emma leaned forward, desperate. "Dad's been reading about About LGBTQ plus issues. I found books in his truck. He's trying to understand. Too little, too late. The thought rose automatically, a defensive wall Jordan had built over years of rejection. But Emma's tear-streaked face made it harder to maintain. I can't, Jordan whispered. I won't go through that again. Emma nodded slowly, disappointment etching lines around her eyes. I understand. But Jordan? Today, when I watched you on that stage, you looked just like Dad when he's talking about something he loves. You have his passion. His determination. She stood, smoothing her dress. Maybe that's worth something. As Emma walked away, Jordan sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the monuments to their success. But all they could see was their father's bent shoulders and a box full of newspaper clippings, hidden like a secret shame or a desperate hope. Maya Rodriguez had covered enough stories to recognize when she'd stumbled onto something bigger than her editor intended. What started as a profile piece on Green Tech's meteoric rise had transformed the moment she'd watched Jordan Matthews' UN speech. The pain flickering behind their eyes during that pause. She'd seen it before. In foster kids aging out of the system. In herself, staring at bathroom mirrors in group homes. The drive to Millbrook, Ohio took 3 hours through farmland and fading autumn colors. Maya had requested interviews with Jordan's family, expecting the usual corporate PR dance. Instead, she'd found something raw and unguarded. Matthews Hardware sat on Main Street like a relic from another era. Paint peeled from the wooden sign, and half the parking spaces were empty. Through the window, Maya watched Robert Matthews organizing inventory with the methodical precision of a man fighting to maintain control over his shrinking world. You're the reporter, he said when she entered. Not a question. Small towns always knew when strangers arrived. He was shorter than she'd expected, his hands weathered from decades of manual work. But his eyes held the same intensity she'd seen in Jordan's speech. Maya Rodriguez, thank you for agreeing to talk. Robert's jaw tightened. Don't have much choice. Whole world's watching now. He gestured around the store. Been in my family 3 generations. Built it from nothing. Thought I'd pass it to my... He stopped, the unfinished word hanging between them. Your child? Don't have any children. The lie came automatically, practiced over 10 years of denial. But Maya saw how his fingers trembled as he organized the same screws for the 3rd time. In the store's back office, Linda Matthews appeared like a ghost. She moved quietly, bringing coffee with shaking hands. Where Robert projected stubborn pride, Linda radiated quiet devastation. Mrs. Matthews? Maya's voice was gentle. Would you like to share anything about Jordan? Linda's composure shattered. From beneath the cash register, she pulled out a worn scrapbook. Page after page of articles, photos, interviews. Jordan's entire career documented with the obsessive care of a mother's love. Every night, Linda whispered, I pray for forgiveness. Not from God, from my child. Her fingers traced a photo of Jordan accepting an environmental award. I kept this hidden. Robert doesn't know, but I couldn't. I couldn't let go. Through the office window, Maya watched Robert's reflection in the storefront glass. His shoulders shook as he pretended to work. But she could see him listening to every word. The man who'd disowned his child for being gay was falling apart, piece by piece, while his wife confessed her secret vigil of love and regret. Maya realized she wasn't just writing a story anymore. She was documenting a family's slow-motion breakdown, witnessed through a mother's hidden scrapbook and a father's stubborn pride. Outside, Millbrook moved at its unhurried pace, unaware that its most famous former resident had left behind parents who were drowning in their own choices. Back in San Francisco, Jordan's phone hadn't stopped buzzing for 2 days. Interview requests from major networks, speaking invitations from universities, collaboration offers from Fortune 500 companies. But the only call that mattered sat unanswered. Maya Rodriguez requesting a formal interview. You're avoiding her, Jin said, dropping into the chair across from Jordan's desk. At 32, Jin had perfected the art of reading Jordan's moods. Today's mood was, quote, defensive and spiraling. I'm managing priorities. Jordan didn't look up from their laptop, but the financial reports on the screen might as well have been hieroglyphics. Emma's visit had shattered their concentration. She called me yesterday. Seems nice. Thorough. Jin's tone carried warning. She's already been to your hometown. Jordan's fingers stilled on the keyboard. What? Talk to your parents, your neighbors. She's building a story with or without your cooperation. Jin leaned forward, his voice dropping. Jordan, I've seen this before. My family tried to reconnect after I made money. Suddenly, 20 years of shame didn't matter when there were dollar signs involved. The parallel stung because Jin's experience had been Jordan's roadmap for the past decade. Jin had been disowned by his Korean immigrant parents for being gay, had built success from nothing, had learned to trust his chosen family over biological obligation. He'd never reconciled with his parents, and he'd seemed at peace with that choice. This feels different, Jordan said quietly. It always does. Jin's protective edge sharpened. They threw you out with nothing. You slept in your car for 3 months. I watched you survive on vending machine food because you were too proud to ask for help. His voice cracked slightly. I won't watch them hurt you again. Before Jordan could respond, their assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Dr. Winters is here for your 4 o'clock. Dr. Elizabeth Winters entered like a force of nature disguised as a university professor. At 45, she commanded respect through presence rather than volume. She'd been Jordan's environmental engineering professor, then thesis advisor, then the first person to believe in green tech when it was just equations on a whiteboard. You look terrible, she said without preamble, settling into a chair. Emma Matthews contacted me. Sweet girl. Worried about you. Jordan felt betrayed. Emma had reached Dr. Winters. How many pieces of their carefully compartmentalized life were going to collide? She mentioned your parents want to reconnect. Dr. Winters studied Jordan with the clinical eye of someone who'd guided them through their darkest period. How are you processing that? I'm not. The answer came too quickly, too defensive. Dr. Winters pulled out her phone, scrolling through messages. Because I also received this today. She showed Jordan an email from Tommy Nguyen, a young LGBTQ+ activist. The subject line read, Inspired by your student. Need guidance. Jordan read the message with growing unease. Tommy had seen their UN speech, had been inspired by their success story, and was facing his own family rejection. He wanted to know if Jordan would speak at an upcoming Pride event, would share their journey publicly. I'm not a spokesperson, Jordan said. No, Dr. Winters agreed. But whether you like it or not, you've become one. That speech made you visible in a way that carries responsibility. Jin shifted uncomfortably. He'd built his life around staying invisible, avoiding the spotlight that attracted unwanted family attention. But Jordan's success had made invisibility impossible. I didn't ask for this, Jordan whispered. None of us ask for the roles life gives us, Dr. Winters said gently, but we get to choose how we fill them. Through the office windows, San Francisco sparkled in the afternoon light. Jordan had built their empire in this city, surrounded themselves with chosen family who understood rejection and resilience. But now the past was demanding acknowledgement, and the future was asking for leadership they'd never wanted to provide. Maya Rodriguez arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early, her notebook already open to questions she'd refined after visiting Millbrook. But when Jordan walked in, shoulders tense, designer blazer perfectly pressed despite the exhaustion in their eyes, Maya realized this wouldn't be a typical interview. Thank you for agreeing to this, Maya said as Jordan settled across from her. The cafe hummed with tech workers and students, providing anonymous cover for their conversation. You've already spoken to my family. Jordan's tone carried ice. Seems like you don't need my input. Maya studied Jordan's face, recognizing the defensive walls she'd built in her own foster care years. I spoke to 2 people who love you desperately and don't know how to show it. Jordan's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. Love? They threw me out. Your mother keeps a scrapbook of every article written about you. Your father has read your UN speech transcript so many times the paper's falling apart. Maya leaned forward. I grew up in foster care. 12 homes before I aged out. I know what abandonment looks like, but I also know what regret looks like. The admission hung between them. Jordan's defensive posture softened slightly, recognizing something familiar in Maya's steady gaze. You don't understand, Jordan said quietly. They didn't just disagree with who I am. They said I was going to hell, that I chose to be broken. I believe you. Maya's voice carried the weight of shared trauma. But I also watched your father cry when he talked about you. Silent tears, like he was afraid sound would make it real. Jordan's breath caught. He cried? When he thought I couldn't see. He kept saying, I raised them wrong, over and over. Maya flipped through her notes. Your mother asked me to give you this. She slid a small envelope across the table. Jordan's name was written in their mother's careful handwriting, the same script that had labeled their school lunches and birthday cards for 18 years. Jordan stared at the envelope without touching it. I can't. Then don't. But Jordan? Maya closed her notebook. I came here to write about a successful CEO. Instead, I found 3 people trapped by one terrible night 10 years ago. Your parents made a choice they can't undo, but they're drowning in it. Good. The word came out harsh, but Jordan's hands were shaking. Maya recognized the tremor. She'd felt it herself, aging out of foster care at 18 with nowhere to go. Anger's easier than hope. Trust me, I know. But it's also lonelier. They sat in silence as the coffee shop buzzed around them. Finally, Jordan picked up the envelope, their fingers tracing their mother's handwriting. If I read this, Jordan whispered, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Maya said gently. The question is whether you go forward carrying the weight of their love or their rejection. Jordan opened the envelope with trembling fingers, their emotional walls finally beginning to crack after 10 years of careful construction. And in that moment, Maya realized she wasn't just documenting a story anymore. She was becoming part of it. Robert Matthews stood outside Green Tech's gleaming headquarters, his weathered hands gripping a duffel bag that had seen better decades. The same bag Jordan had carried the night he'd thrown them out. He'd driven 12 hours straight from Ohio, fueled by Linda's tearful confession about her hidden scrapbook and a desperation that had been building for 10 years. The security guard at the reception desk looked at Robert's work boots and flannel shirt with polite suspicion. Sir, do you have an appointment? I'm here to see Jordan Matthews. I'm there. The word father stuck in his throat. He'd forfeited that right 10 years ago. I'm Robert Matthews. Recognition flickered across the guard's face. Everyone had seen the viral footage of Jordan's UN speech. Let me call upstairs. Robert waited in the lobby, surrounded by awards and accolades that chronicled his child's success. Employee of the Year certificates, environmental innovation prizes, magazine covers, evidence of the life Jordan had built without him. His chest tightened with pride and regret in equal measure. Sir? The guard's voice was careful. I'm sorry, but Mr. Matthews isn't taking unscheduled meetings today. Robert nodded, understanding but not accepting. He'd driven 12 hours to face the biggest mistake of his life. He wasn't leaving without trying. He settled onto a bench outside the building, the duffel bag at his feet. Passers-by gave him curious looks, a man clearly out of place in San Francisco's tech corridor. Robert didn't care. He'd waited 10 years. He could wait longer. By afternoon, a small crowd of photographers had gathered. Someone had recognized him from Emma's social media posts, and the story was already spreading. Estranged father waits outside CEO's office. Jin Park emerged from the building like a protective thunderstorm. At 32, he looked younger than Robert had expected, but his eyes held the fierce loyalty of someone who'd helped pick up Jordan's pieces. You need to leave, Jin said, his voice controlled but dangerous. Haven't you done enough damage? Robert stood slowly, his knees protesting the hours on the hard bench. I'm not leaving without seeing my child. Your child? Jin's voice cracked. You threw them out. They slept in their car for 3 months because of you. I held them while they cried themselves to sleep because their father chose his prejudice over his kid. The words hit Robert like physical blows. He'd known Jordan had suffered, but the specifics, sleeping in a car, crying themselves to sleep, made it real in a way that 10 years of guilt hadn't managed. I know, Robert whispered. I know what I did. That's why I'm here. 10 years too late. Jin stepped closer, his protective fury radiating heat. Jordan's finally happy, finally successful. And you want to waltz back in because it's convenient now? It's not convenient. Robert's voice broke. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But I was wrong. About everything. And I need them to know that. Through the building's glass walls, Robert caught a glimpse of Jordan watching from an upper floor. Even from a distance, he could see the conflict in their posture. The child who'd once run to him for comfort warring with the adult who'd learned to survive without him. Please, Robert said to Jin, his pride finally crumbling. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need 5 minutes to say what I should have said 10 years ago. Dr. Winter's office felt like neutral territory, warm wood panels and soft lighting that had witnessed countless difficult conversations. Jordan sat rigidly in the familiar chair where they'd once processed their darkest moments, while Robert perched on the edge of the couch like he might bolt at any second. Maya and Jin flanked Jordan protectively, their presence both comfort and reminder of the chosen family that had saved them. Thank you for agreeing to this, Dr. Winters said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd facilitated healing for decades. Robert, you asked for this meeting. The floor is yours. Robert's hands trembled as he reached into the duffel bag, withdrawing a worn manila folder. Jordan recognized it immediately, the same type their father had used for important documents when they were young. Inside were the newspaper clippings Emma had mentioned, each one carefully preserved, annotated in Robert's careful handwriting. I've read every article, Robert began, his voice barely above a whisper. Every interview. I know about the carbon capture technology, the UN speech, the awards. He looked up, meeting Jordan's eyes for the first time. I know you're saving the world, just like you always said you would. Jordan's throat constricted. At 8 years old, they'd declared their intention to fix the planet during a school presentation. Robert had been in the audience, beaming with pride. The memory felt like a knife between their ribs. That doesn't change what you did, Jordan said, their voice steady despite the storm inside. No, it doesn't. Robert's composure cracked. That night, God help me, I was so afraid. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid of what it meant about how I'd raised you. Afraid that everything I'd been taught about right and wrong was... He stopped, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I chose my fear over my child. There's no forgiving that. Jin shifted beside Jordan, his protective instincts warring with unexpected sympathy for the broken man across from them. After you left, Robert continued, I told myself it was for the best. That tough love would bring you back, make you change. But weeks turned to months, and you were just... gone. I started reading about LGBTQ+ issues, trying to understand. Bought books. Talked to Pastor Williams about love versus judgment. His voice broke completely. I learned that everything I thought I knew about God's love was poisoned by my own prejudice. Maya watched Jordan's face, recognizing the war between hope and self-protection. She'd lived that same battle in countless foster homes. 3 years ago, Robert said, pulling out a worn paperback, I read this book about parents of LGBTQ+ children. There was a chapter about a father who lost his son to suicide because he couldn't accept him. Robert's hands shook as he held the book. I realized I was one wrong choice away from losing you forever. Not just losing you, but destroying you. You already destroyed me, Jordan whispered, but the words lacked their earlier venom. I know, but you rebuilt yourself into something extraordinary. Without me. Without any of us. Robert leaned forward, his eyes filled with desperate sincerity. I'm not here to ask for another chance. I'm here to tell you that you were right to leave. Right to build a new family. right to become exactly who you were meant to be. Dr. Winters intervened gently. Jordan, what are you feeling right now? Jordan stared at their father, really looked at him for the first time in a decade. Robert Matthews looked smaller somehow, diminished by regret and the weight of his choices. But his eyes held something that hadn't been there 10 years ago. Genuine love without conditions. I'm feeling, Jordan's voice caught. I'm feeling like that 18-year-old kid again, standing in the hardware store, begging you to love me as I am. I should have, Robert said fiercely. God knows I should have. You were perfect exactly as you were, and I was too blind to see it. The room fell silent, except for the distant hum of San Francisco traffic. Jordan looked at Jin, at Maya, at Dr. Winters, the people who'd helped them survive Robert's rejection. Then they looked back at their father, seeing not the towering figure of their childhood, but a flawed man drowning in his own mistakes. I don't know if I can forgive you, Jordan said finally. I don't expect you to, Robert replied. I just needed you to know that you were never the problem. I was. Linda Matthews' letter had been simple. If you're reading this, maybe there's still hope. Please come home. Love, Mom. 3 sentences that had taken her 6 months to write. Crumpled drafts hidden in her jewelry box like secrets. Maya drove while Jordan stared out the passenger window at the Ohio countryside rolling past. They'd been silent for the last hour, processing Robert's words and the decision to accept their mother's invitation. The rental car felt like a time machine, each mile stripping away years of success and sophistication. You okay? Maya asked as they passed the familiar grain elevator that marked Millbrook's outskirts. Jordan's chest tightened. No, but I don't think I've been okay for 10 years. The Matthews house looked smaller than Jordan remembered, its white siding faded, and the front porch slightly sagging. Linda appeared in the doorway before they'd even parked, her hands clutched together like prayer. At 53, she looked older than Jordan expected, gray threading through her brown hair, worry lines etched deep around her eyes. Jordan. Her voice broke on their name. She stepped forward hesitantly, as if sudden movement might shatter the moment. You came. Jordan stood frozen on the sidewalk, caught between the child who'd once run to those arms and the adult who'd learned to survive without them. Linda's face crumpled with 10 years of suppressed grief. I'm sorry, Linda whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have fought for you, should have chosen you over everything else. She reached out tentatively, her fingers barely brushing Jordan's cheek. My baby. My brilliant, beautiful baby. The endearment broke something fundamental in Jordan's chest. They stepped into their mother's embrace, feeling small and safe for the first time in a decade. Linda held them fiercely, her tears soaking Jordan's shirt. 10 years of separation dissolving in a moment of desperate love. I never stopped loving you, Linda murmured against Jordan's hair. Not for 1 second. I prayed for you every night, lit candles at church, kept every article. She pulled back to study Jordan's face. You look so much like your father when he was young. Same determined jaw, same passionate eyes. Inside the house, everything was exactly as Jordan remembered. The same mismatched furniture, the cross-stitched Bible verses on the walls, the smell of coffee and vanilla candles. But on the mantelpiece, displayed prominently among family photos, was a framed magazine cover featuring Jordan's face. I put it up the day the article came out, Linda said, following Jordan's gaze. Your father tried to take it down twice. I told him if he touched it, I'd leave. She straightened the frame unconsciously. 30 years of marriage, and that was the first time I'd ever threatened him with anything. But I wasn't hiding my pride anymore. Emma appeared from the kitchen, her eyes red from crying. She'd driven down from Columbus to be here, taking a personal day from teaching to witness this fragile reunion. Mom's been cooking all morning, Emma said softly. Your favorite. Pot roast and chocolate cake. Jordan's throat closed. Their mother had remembered, had spent the morning preparing a meal for the child she'd lost 10 years ago. Love expressed through food and memory, through the stubborn refusal to let go completely. The week following Jordan's homecoming brought a maelstrom of media attention that no amount of corporate PR training had prepared them for. Paparazzi camped outside Green Tech's offices. Tabloids speculated about family drama, and Jordan's every public appearance was dissected for signs of emotional turmoil. Tommy and Green's Pride event was scheduled for Saturday, and Jordan found themselves caught between competing obligations. Their phone buzzed with messages from conservative investors threatening to pull funding if Jordan became, quote, too political, while Tommy's hopeful texts reminded them of the community that needed representation. "The board's nervous," Jin said, pacing Jordan's office like a caged animal. "Peterson Industries is reconsidering the partnership. They're saying your, quote, personal situation creates unnecessary risk." Jordan stared out at San Francisco Bay, their reflection ghost-like in the window. 2 weeks ago, they'd been a successful CEO with a carefully managed public image. Now they were headline news, their private pain dissected by strangers. "Maybe they're right," Jordan said quietly. "Maybe I should step back, keep my head down." "Since when do you back down from anything?" Maya's voice carried challenge and affection in equal measure. She'd become a constant presence since their return from Ohio, her article deadline looming while their relationship deepened beyond professional boundaries. Jordan turned to face their small circle of chosen family. Jin, protective and worried. Maya, challenging them to embrace authenticity. Dr. Winters, who'd arrived for their scheduled session, but found herself mediating a crisis of identity. "I built this company to change the world," Jordan said. "But now the world wants to change me back." "The world wants you to be quiet," Dr. Winters corrected gently. "There's a difference. The question is, what does Jordan Matthews want?" Before Jordan could answer, their assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Tommy Nagian is here. Says he's not leaving until he talks to you." Tommy burst through the door like concentrated sunlight, his energy barely contained by his slight frame. At 24, he possessed the fearless optimism that Jordan envied and remembered from their own younger self. "I know you're scared," Tommy said without preamble. "I know powerful people are pressuring you to disappear. But there's a 16-year-old kid in Sacramento who's been kicked out of his house, sleeping in shelters, and the only thing keeping him going is your UN speech." Jordan's chest tightened. "Tommy, there's a girl in Phoenix whose parents are sending her to conversion therapy, and she printed out your magazine interview to remind herself that successful LGBTQ+ people exist." Tommy stepped closer, his voice fierce with conviction. "You think this is about you? This is about every kid who needs to see that it gets better, that they can build something beautiful from the wreckage." The room fell silent. Through the windows, Jordan could see protesters gathering, both supporters holding rainbow flags and counter-protesters with signs demanding traditional values. Their success had made them a symbol whether they wanted it or not. Maya's article was publishing tomorrow, revealing the full story of family separation and tentative reconciliation. Soon, the whole world would know that even successful people carried wounds, that healing was possible but never simple. "The event's tomorrow," Tommy said softly. "Whatever you decide, I understand. But that kid in Sacramento? He's going to be watching." Jordan looked at their chosen family, then at Tommy's hopeful face. The weight of representation felt crushing. But perhaps that was the price of authentic success, using your platform to light the way for others still finding their path. The San Francisco Pride Center overflowed with an energy Jordan hadn't felt since their UN speech, but this time it was personal. Rainbow flags draped the walls alongside banners reading, "Authenticity is revolutionary," and "Success without shame." Tommy had organized everything with military precision, but his nervous energy was palpable as he adjusted the microphone for the third time. Jordan stood backstage, their hands trembling slightly as they reviewed notes they'd written and rewritten throughout the sleepless night. Maya's article had published that morning to overwhelming response. Thousands of comments from people sharing their own family reconciliation stories, their struggles with acceptance, their gratitude for seeing someone like them succeed without hiding. "You ready for this?" Jin appeared beside them, his earlier protectiveness replaced by quiet pride. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." Through the curtain's gap, Jordan could see the audience. Teenagers clutching printed articles, parents holding photos of their children, activists and allies filling every seat. In the front row, impossible but real, sat Linda and Emma Matthews. Their mother had driven 12 hours overnight to be here, her presence both support and statement. 10 years ago, Jordan began when they took the stage, their voice carrying clearly through the packed room. My father told me to choose between changing who I was or losing my family. I chose authenticity, and I thought that choice cost me everything. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Jordan found their mother's face in the crowd, seeing tears streaming down Linda's cheeks. I spent a decade building walls around my success, convincing myself that achievement was armor against rejection. I built a company, gained recognition, spoke to world leaders. But I was still that 18-year-old kid, carrying the wound of abandonment like a secret shame. Jordan's voice grew stronger, more confident. 3 weeks ago, my family reached out. Not because they wanted something from my success, but because they'd done the hardest work of all. They'd changed. My father, raised in tradition and fear, educated himself about love. My mother, taught to be silent, found her voice. My sister became the bridge none of us knew we needed. The crowd erupted in applause, but Jordan continued over the noise. Healing isn't a destination. It's a choice we make every day. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's refusing to let past pain dictate future possibilities. And family? Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see your authentic self and love you for it, not despite it. Jordan gestured toward Jin, Maya, Dr. Winters, and Tommy. These people saved my life when my biological family couldn't. But today, I'm grateful that chosen family and biological family don't have to be mutually exclusive. In the front row, Linda Matthews stood and began clapping, her face radiant with pride. Emma joined her, then others throughout the audience, until the entire room was on its feet. To every young person listening, Jordan concluded, their voice carrying the authority of someone who'd survived and thrived, your dreams matter more than other people's comfort. Your authenticity is worth more than their approval. And if you've been disowned, dismissed, or told you're broken, build something beautiful from the pieces. Show them that love always wins, even when it takes 10 years to arrive. As Jordan left the stage, they felt something they hadn't experienced since childhood: complete integration of their public and private selves. Maya's article had given them a voice, their family's journey had given them perspective, and Tommy's community had given them purpose. 6 months later, at GreenTech's annual celebration, Jordan stood before their employees with Linda, Robert, and Emma at their side. The conservative investors had departed, replaced by partners who valued authenticity alongside innovation. Jordan's speech at the Pride event had gone viral, not as a scandal, but as inspiration. Success, Jordan told their team, isn't measured only in profits or accolades. It's measured in how many doors we open for others, how many bridges we build, and how much healing we enable. They looked at their family, chosen and biological, fractured and mended. Today I'm proud to say we're succeeding on all fronts. The applause filled the room, but Jordan's attention fixed on Robert Matthews, who mouthed 2 words across the crowd. I'm proud. Finally, after 38 years and 10 years of separation, Jordan Matthews felt truly home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.